1. Jumped in a Boston movie theater. Killed on the streets of Chicago. A public official exempt, or so she thinks, from the law. An amazing video from Rhode Island. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. 2. Gavin Newsom crashing out. Loudoun County, Virginia, crashing out with Senator from Missouri, Eric Schmitt. 3. The Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Health and Human Services lay down a challenge to Will Cain. And MSNBC is in the cemetery. It is Will Cain Country, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, the Will Cain Country YouTube channel, terrestrial radio, 3 dozen markets across this great United States of America, but always available at Spotify or on Apple. MSNBC is dead. Bury it in the cemetery. MSNBC has been rebranded MS Now. My source, news, opinion, and world. Who were the pallbearers that carried this casket into its grave? That's coming up a little bit later here on Will Cain Country. Plus, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, with impeccable timing, just 2 days after I did 300 push-ups and 66 pull-ups, swam 3 miles across the Hudson River, issues a physical challenge. He and Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., went to the bowels of the Pentagon to decide America needs to be fit, not fat. They have a new challenge, and maybe it's for you. Here it is, 100 push-ups, 50 pull-ups, 5 minutes.
All right, here we are in the bowels of the Pentagon for the Pete and Bobby Challenge. I think this was your idea, so I blame you. But it's all about Make America Healthy Again. We're going to be fit, not fat. We want recruits that are ready to go.
There you go, the Pete and Bobby Challenge. We're going to break it down for you a little bit later, but it is 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups in as close as you can get to 5 minutes. We're going to break that down because both of them issued personal challenges that hit close to home here on Will Cain Country. You got to stick around to see who they called out, who has to do the challenge, and who might they call out as this thing spreads across the country. Speaking of the country, today should be perhaps our final day streaming Will Cain Country at the Fox News YouTube channel. If you've been hanging out with us the past year at the Fox News YouTube channel, and I know that you have, there are some 40 to 100,000 of you that watch us on a daily basis on the Fox News YouTube channel. We need you to head over to the Will Cain Country YouTube channel. There you'll subscribe, and there you will see this show every day as we build our community on that independent channel. We're excited about streaming this show at Will Cain Country. It's time to build the audience inside of our own pirate ship, right there, together, that community. But if you head over to the Fox News YouTube channel, it's going to be hard to find. So we're going to do our best everywhere. Will Cain Country, Will Cain Show, and Will Cain on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, to point you in the direction of finding this show on our own page over on YouTube. But now is your chance. We'll make sure we have a link up in today's show description. We have a place where you can go over and you can find that page. And the boys 2 days, Dan and Tinfoil Pat, let's get that up as we speak. Let's get a link there for the audience who is listening and hanging out with us, as they do every day here on the Fox News YouTube channel, to head over. We don't want to miss you. We don't want to lose you in the transition. We want you to hang out with us at Will Cain Country. So make sure you click over and start setting a little bookmark or subscription so that you can always have easy access to Will Cain Country. Because you don't want to miss some of the stuff. For example, we're going to talk about today. You got to hear from Joy Reid as she helped carry the casket to the grave for MSNBC. But let's get into all the big stories of the day, starting with story number 1. Massive meeting of world leaders yesterday in Washington, D.C. as European Commission, NATO, and the prime ministers and presidents from France, Germany, Sweden, Finland, all joined together in Washington, D.C., along with President Donald Trump, to begin the conversation with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine on whether or not there would be a peace deal with Russia. While we are confident and hopeful that we're in a moment now of unique opportunities in history to put behind us almost a 4-year war led by President Donald Trump, there is a healthy level of skepticism about the trust one can place in Vladimir Putin. Game theory is one of my favorite thought experiments. I think it actually pulls me into almost every, at least reality television show. People say to me, Will, why do you like Love is Blind? I love Love is Blind. But I like it because of the game theory, the human experiment. I've always been attracted to game theory. There's a television show, a game show, that used to air in the UK. It was called Golden Balls. And and I've talked about it before, Golden Balls. And it's this experiment where they put two people against one another, and they have to pick with a pot of money between them to split the money or steal the money. If they both select steal, everyone gets 0. If they both select split, they split the money evenly. If one selects split and one selects steal, the stealer goes home with all the money. And you watch the people negotiate and talk and persuade and cajole and cry and plead. And then in the end, you're almost always surprised at who is the villain, who's willing to select steal. Another game theory is the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is the idea that we can get out of something together, but if we fall apart and it's every man for himself, we can all go down as well. Game theory is written all over these negotiations with Vladimir Putin, world leaders, and Zelensky in Ukraine. Here's the game board as it sets today. Vladimir Putin has the upper hand. He is winning the chess match. He is winning the war. Albeit slowly, he has the cards. Dare I bring up cards? That certainly set off President Donald Trump and Zelensky in their first meeting in the Oval Office. But he has the cards. As Trump said to Zelensky, you don't have the cards. It may take time. It's a war of attrition. Every war ever won by Russia is a war of attrition. Famously, they throw bodies into the meat grinder. World War I, World War II. Every war, they have a tolerance for human loss. But over the long term, the theory is we have a lot of people, so we'll win a lot of wars. Slowly and with attrition, Vladimir Putin has taken districts in the eastern part of Ukraine. In several of those regions, ranging from Crimea up to Luhansk, from south to north, Russia's established about 90% control. The big established contested region is Donetsk. The reason I bring up the granular geography of Ukraine is what we're looking at is a deal that almost inevitably involves a land swap for security. Vladimir Putin wants land. Zelensky then wants security, which, according to reports, will include not just NATO, but the United States. Not a full membership for Ukraine, but effective Article 5 type security agreements. That's what exists within the NATO agreements. Although not formally NATO, there will be big-time troops, big-time security arrangements in Ukraine for Ukraine. Why? Because if a land swap occurs, the fear is Vladimir Putin can use that as a launching pad into the rest of Ukraine. You see, what Putin seems to want is a section of Donetsk where there's big cities, and he maintains almost 0% control. It is Ukraine's Alamo. It is their wall of defense. It's also a hilly topographic region. On the other side of that hilly topographic region, it plays out into low, flat farmland. If one can get past those natural barriers, it's a straight march to Kiev. And in the nature of war, when we put all these negotiations and talk and golden balls into effect, the truth is the way the world works is to the victor go the spoils. That's the nature of sheer power. And when you factor that in, it's pretty easy to say, well, Ukraine, you can't get land back that you lost to Russia. in a truce. And Russia, you can't get land that you haven't yet won from Ukraine in a truce. Except Putin, with those cards in his hand, can say, oh, well, okay, then we'll keep fighting until I get that land. And everyone, most notably President Donald Trump, wants the killing to stop now, no more. So could that land that he doesn't yet control, that he couldn't win in battle, be given to him in negotiation? Now, here's the game theory for Zelensky. It's the catch-22. I can give up the land and stop the war, but if I give up the land, I might give up my power. It'd be incredibly unpopular in Ukraine. He might lose elections. He might even lose the whole country if Putin uses it as a launching pad into the rest of Ukraine. On the other hand, if he doesn't give up the land, he continues to slowly lose the war of attrition. He doesn't have in his hands the cards of Vladimir Putin. It's a very tough situation for Ukraine. And how much can you trust the guy on the other side of the table from you when you're playing golden balls? How much can you trust that Vladimir Putin will say, I'll take that land, I'll give you your security agreements, and we'll call it all cool? Or will he continue to march further down the line, perhaps, into Ukraine? It is real liar's poker. It is really difficult here for Zelensky and by proxy for President Trump. I don't know that I would ever be in a position where I could say, we're giving up something that you haven't yet won. We're giving up this western portion of Donetsk, this urban center, our last line of defense, the Alamo. And then we're going to fortify behind that. No, I don't know that you could give it up. It's got to be, you've won what you've won. We defended what we defended. But then there's Vladimir Putin over there going, okay, time to play the rest of my cards, which are the historical attrition and long, drawn-out, bloody wars of Russia. We'll find out, as President Donald Trump said, in the next few weeks. Meanwhile, back at home, crime continues to stay forefront in the unlucky minds of Americans. In Boston, a Harvard researcher attending a movie was upset that a group of teenagers, no details on those teenagers, interrupting a movie, clapping, yelling, joking throughout the movie. He asked them to stop. It didn't happen. So they beat him up. He got a bloodied nose, was cornered by a bunch of teenagers. It didn't go well for this Harvard researcher. You can see a picture here really quickly. I'll share it with you if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook of what ended up the face of this Harvard researcher. Bloodied hands, bloodied nose, for trying to stand up to teenagers at a Boston movie theater. Meanwhile, in Chicago authorities are searching for a suspect accused of fatally shooting a woman during a botched robbery attempt over the weekend as criminals terrorized the city where Trump has threatened to move in federal forces. A 31-year-old woman was killed after being shot in the chest during an attempted robbery in the city's south side on Saturday night. Unfortunately, not an unfamiliar story to the people of Chicago. In Seattle, take a look at Pervert Park. Apparently, there is a park in Seattle where people can go naked and let their freak flags fly. Well, along with that, a lot of freaks apparently like to pleasure themselves. What does Seattle do about this? They don't know what to do about this, but they have decided they'd erect a fence. It's a chain link fence with like a green mesh around the city, and they've termed the infrastructure Perv Park. Jason Rantz, Fox News contributor, Seattle radio show host, has a headline rant. City of Seattle installs public masturbation deterrent infrastructure at Perv Park. Makes matters worse. Apparently a homeless man who likes to pleasure himself in the area tore down the green meshing because, hey, nothing's going to stand in the way of getting my rocks off. And then finally, in Rhode Island, an assistant attorney general being asked to leave an establishment said, "Don't you know who I am?" Here, I introduce you to an AG in Rhode Island.
If I ask you to turn off the body cam, you have to turn it off, and that's your protocol.
She's a lawyer, so she knows.
Well, that's bull lawyer stuff, so that's not true. So we gotta go.
No, it is. That's law.
I'm an
What do you
AG.
think?
I'm an AG.
Good for you. I don't give a Let's go. We're going. Let's go. We're leaving.
Please don't put your hands on us.
I'm an AG. I'm an AG. I'm an AG.
What's wrong with you?
What are you probable cause to detain me for?
You're being detained because you're not leaving.
Because I'm what? You have
Can you relax? Sir, she's not doing anything wrong.
AG.
She's not leaving.
I'm an AG.
She's
the AG.
Buddy, you're not. She's not being arrested. Let's go.
I'm an AG. I'm an AG. She says over and over. She also instructs him to turn off his body cam that you can at the request. He said that's BS lawyer stuff. She seems to think she's exempt from the law. So from Seattle to Chicago to Boston to Rhode Island, we're looking at a culture of crime, which is a culture you can change with a little bit of effort and focus and willingness, which is exactly what we've seen unfold in Washington, D.C. Since the federal takeover of crime fighting in Washington, D.C. by President Donald Trump, I just want to show you what's happened in the 7 days since that's taken place in D.C. Take a look at this. Robbery down 46%. Carjacking down 83%. Car theft down 21%. Violent crime down 22%. All crimes down 8%, according to the D.C. Police Union. It can be solved. It can be solved if you want to. It can be solved if you give, yes, resources, but more importantly, a willingness, a culture to fixing crime. What is happening in D.C. could happen in Rhode Island, could happen in Boston, could happen in Chicago, could happen in Seattle. Don't let people convince you that our problems are intractable. Yes, we have to fix culture. Yes, we have to fix families. But we also have to punish and deter and show an intolerance for uncivilized behavior in civilization. And once you do, you can make the quality of life better for people who want to live civilized. That is the experiment that is being played out in Washington, D.C. Let's talk about this. Plus, how you win in the court system. While one side is ready to destroy the pillars of a constitutional republic, including packing the court, how does one win? Well, the former Attorney General of Missouri, now the Senator of Missouri, Eric Schmitt, has a new book about that. We're going to talk to him about that and the crash out, in my mind, the absolute crash out of Gavin Newsom, coming up on Will Cain Country. Public. It's all public the way that Gavin Newsom is crashing out with every post, with every tweet, with every word on X. Gavin Newsom convinces us that he never was presidential material. It is Will Cain Country streaming live today at the Fox News YouTube channel, tomorrow at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel. If you go to our comment section, Willisha, right there, pinned at the top of the comments is a link to the new channel. It's where we're going to build our community. We want you to head over there, please. This is where you're going to have to find us starting tomorrow. So we want you to head over there, hit subscribe or bookmark it, whatever you need to do to make sure this is where you go to find Will Cain Country. Finding his way in right now is Republican Senator from Missouri, Eric Schmitt, who has a new book out entitled The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. As the former Attorney General of Missouri, he has his fair share of battles when it comes to the left and the courts, and we're glad to have him here on the show. Senator, thanks for being here.
It's great to be with you. I did listen to the previous segment, I can assure you I never said, I'm an AG when I was AG in situations like that. What a disaster for her in Rhode Island. What a joke.
Isn't it a get out of jail free card?
No,
apparently that's the get out of jail free card. Police, I'm an AG.
Oh, Lordy. Never said you know who I am.
Do you know who I am? There are fun videos of people who, as lowly as nothing against city council members, but please, when you get pulled over. But I've seen videos of sheriffs, of city council members, now of attorney generals, all of a sudden, oh, the law doesn't apply to me because I guess somehow I'm involved in enforcing the law. So I'm exempted from the law.
It's just cringeworthy. Every time I see that, it's just very cringe. Yeah, for sure.
Hey, speaking of the law, Senator, let's just talk for a minute together, if you wouldn't mind. You have a long history of prosecuting the law. What's happening in D.C.? I think, while there are like half-second worthy conversations about the value of federalism, which we love. We love federalism, but the application of it to Washington, D.C. is moot. What we're really actually seeing is the successful effects of will, the willingness to enforce civilized culture and the willingness to enforce the law. And I just think it is really interesting to posit it against these places like Rhode Island or Boston or Chicago. And I know in St. Louis, you guys have had a big problem throughout your history with crime there as well. So, but what you see here is it can be done, right, Senator?
That's right. And I think it's actually part of what we've seen from President Trump in the first, almost 8 months now, is just this desire. I mean, he has intense energy, right, and desire to make America great again, right? It's not just a phrase. It actually means things for people in their real lives. Think of his willingness to renegotiate these trade deals. Nobody took that on. He just decided he was going to go do that. His willingness to go fight for peace deals across the world. And of course, we're seeing that play out with Russia and Ukraine now, what happened yesterday. So this singular ability of a leader to actually transform something is really important. President Trump's doing it, and you're seeing it now with crime in Washington, D.C. It's totally appropriate for the president to say, look, this is our nation's capital. This isn't some state. This is our nation's capital. People come and visit. World leaders come here. We shouldn't have like these tent cities everywhere. You shouldn't have a 500% increase in carjackings in the last 5 years. But that's what we've seen. And the statistics already, they're coming out that crime is coming down. And it's amazing what happens when you have a police presence and you're willing to prosecute violent crime, right? Those two things, it's not, sometimes we overcomplicate things, Will, and we want to get into all the touchy-feely stuff. But the truth is my time as a prosecutor, and I prosecuted a case actually in the city of St. Louis, what people respond to is accountability. Like if they know there's actually accountability at the end of the rainbow, you can affect behavior. And I think for far too long, we've allowed the left to kind of disrupt this narrative and a really displaced version of who the victims are. The victims are the poor African-American mom in part of the city that's tired of cleaning up glass on her porch every Sunday morning. Or the people who actually are the victims of the crimes themselves, who've been raped, who've been murdered, who've been assaulted, who've been carjacked. So this kind of social experiment that Soros prosecutors put forth, and you see in places like Washington, D.C., has totally failed. It's defund the police thing has totally been rejected, and it's time to get back to law and order.
So I love what you talk about the concept of accountability. Now, I agree with you. We have a president who's willing to just simply take action to improve the lives of people. I find myself at times a little torn because I'm a deep believer in the concept of federalism. I don't think there's been any violation of the concept of federalism, but the nature of the Constitution, as you know well, Senator, is really honestly to place hurdles in the way of getting things done often. And we look at D.C. as a result. We're like, well, nothing ever gets done in D.C. But that's the process of the checks and balances in the Constitution itself, a limitation on the powers of the federal government, which then puts the onus on local governments, states, cities, and honestly, people who elect them on what kind of accountability they demand, right? The vision of America wasn't a government that got nothing done, but which government got things done. And your city and your state are the most accountable, should be, to you. And so we look at places like Chicago and we look at places like Seattle and you say, well, locally, apparently, there's no demand for accountability. Now, there's a lot of things that you're familiar with and you've written about in your book here. But like the presence of Soros-funded prosecutors, the effects on mayors and then on police departments in these cities. And as much as it's great that President Trump is doing something, there has to be a solution for these cities at the most accountable level, and that is the smallest level of government.
Well, and I think you touch on a very important point, and I talk about it in the book, Last Line of Defense, which is available on Amazon right now. You can go on and get it. Is that let's just kind of take a step back in a civics lesson, right? The states created a federal government to be of limited powers. That gets lost sometimes at people in Washington, D.C. You're supposed to have limited powers, and all the states had to unanimously agree to it. That's how we got a constitution. The states also retain the right to grant limited powers to local governments. That's why they're called political subdivisions of the state. So the states really kind of are at the center of the ring here, that kind of given powers to the federal government and to local governments. And so for me, when I was Attorney General, one of the things that we did in President Trump's first term is we started something called the Safer Streets Initiative, where we worked with U.S. attorneys because we had a Soros prosecutor in St. Louis. And she was impossible. So we worked with the U.S. attorneys. We deputized lawyers from our office to work with federal prosecutors to prosecute violent crimes in some of the major urban areas. So I think you just got to be kind of creative, understanding, kind of where the sources of power are at. But if you're committed to it, like what President Trump is doing in Washington, there are solutions to all this. But I also think you've got to be willing to kind of, for people that are in that arena, you got to be willing to fight, which is a lot of what's in this book when we saw it really in kind of the darkest days, whether it's COVID or the Biden administration, really willing to push back in this system of federalism where the states can check federal overreach. It's one of the things that we were able to do and talk about in the book.
Right. And you did talk about that, by the way, and you did lead up, for example, in the Biden censorship initiative, lawsuits from the states. I believe it was a compact of states, if I remember correctly, that you helped lead up, pushing back on that censorship from Joe Biden.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons why I wrote the book, Last Line of Defense, was it's right now. I start the book by saying in November of 2024, the fever broke. And I think now that we're talking about all the great things, Will, that the Trump administration is doing, and rightfully so, it's easy to lose perspective on how crazy that 4-year period was. This was an era of lockdowns, of compulsory COVID shots, of open borders, of DEI struggle sessions, of ESG, of a censorship enterprise that the federal government engaged in with big tech companies that was so vast that it was the biggest threat to our First Amendment we've ever seen. All these things were happening, not somewhere else, but in the United States of America. And so while President Trump was, out of power before he could come back, he kind of fell to these relatively unknown folks. I was included in that group who stood up and pushed back. So when we had the vaccine mandate, Missouri led the charge on challenging that, taking it to the Supreme Court, and we won. On the student loan debt forgiveness scam, it was $500 billion of taxpayer money. We took that to the Supreme Court and we won. I also sued 50+ school districts in Missouri for their mask policies, and we won. We also brought that censorship case you mentioned, Missouri versus Biden, which before Elon Musk had bought Twitter and before these congressional investigations, opened the door and exposed this shockingly vast leviathan of government agencies that were suppressing the speech of Americans, mostly conservatives. And one of the things we did in that case, we talk about in the book, is before we sought the preliminary injunction, Will, we sought discovery. It was a very important strategic decision. So we got reams and reams of documents that showed these secret portals, specific phrases that were to be censored. And in the Last Line of Defense, we kind of take the reader behind the scenes of what was it like to take the deposition of Anthony Fauci? What was it like to take the deposition of Elvis Chan, who was the FBI agent, who was pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story on the eve of the 2020 election? All this crazy stuff that was going on that was uncovered. The reason why I wrote the book was we can just never let that happen again. And now we have a playbook of what it's like for conservatives in the courts, which we've always viewed suspiciously, I think, to some degree. We have to be willing to stand up and fight in our court system. And if we do it, we can win. And the cavalry arrived with President Trump, and I think the fight continues. So this is a playbook on how we stand up and fight.
What was it like to take the deposition of Anthony Fauci?
It was surreal. So he'd only had his deposition taken twice. This was the second time he'd ever taken it. And really, we spent a lot of the initial part of the deposition talking about the origins of COVID. Because if you remember, Fauci spent a lot of time and energy trying to convince everybody that this was some like bat mating with a penguin in a wet market, crazy, stupid theory, when everybody knew, and now we know, with the intelligence agencies have been verifying this, that this came from a lab called the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. Like, it came out of the lab. And so we walked through like, hey, what did you do in those early stages? We uncovered some things that weren't talked about before, which was he sent his chief deputy over there to look at what was the CCP was doing, and they fell in love with these lockdowns. Like, he tried to undermine President Trump in having a less restrictive policy. He wanted more restrictions. We asked him, what do you really think about masks? And we uncovered an email where his friend in early 2020, when this first happened, emailed him and said, hey, I'm getting on a flight. Do I need to wear a mask or not? And he's like, of course not. Masks are totally ineffective. And then, of course, he's forcing masking on 5-year-olds to enable to go to school. So all this hypocrisy. And it was really about power and control. And to me, what COVID and what we talk about in the book, and people can get on Amazon, is these COVID wars. What was that? It was really a trial run for the left to have this emergency, aggregate power, and silence dissent. And that playbook that they have can be replicated in other places. Think of climate alarmism or Trump as a threat to democracy, whatever they want to create in this emergency. So we got to know how to fight and we got to know how to win. But one thing that came out also at that deposition, which is totally insane, was we came back from a lunch break and the court reporter sneezed. Fauci demanded that she put a mask on. This is, by the way, in November of 2022. This was not like April of 2020. So the guy in charge of our public health apparatus was so sensitive in November 2022 that if somebody sneezed, they had to wear a mask. It's just a little bit of an insight to a man who didn't want to really ever be questioned. And as we pressed him on things, for a guy who claimed to be the science, suddenly he couldn't recall. He said, I can't recall 174 times in the deposition. So this book, I think your audience will love it because it really takes you back in time what those important fights were, how we were able to win, and what we need to do moving forward.
So you said that about using emergencies as an opportunity to consolidate power. I don't even think that's projection anymore, or rather, I don't think that requires reading between the lines. They're saying it out loud, like Robert Francis O'Rourke and others are saying, F the rules, grab the power. The pretense of saving democracy was pretty well exposed, and democracy simply translated means their own power. One of the biggest hypocrites in this entire exercise through COVID and then as a continuation, because he was a hypocrite going in, so why wouldn't he be a hypocrite during and coming out, is Governor Gavin Newsom of California. So I wanted to see what you thought about this. His press office, which has been on this, alternate personality tour over on X, impersonating President Trump and so forth. They're trying to fight back against this idea that this illegal immigrant driver in Florida who had gotten his CDL license in California is somehow Gavin Newsom's fault. So they go on to X and they said the following. Hey, genius, the federal government, the Trump administration, already confirmed that this guy meets federal and state immigration requirements. You issued him a work permit. As usual, the Trump administration is lying or is clueless. But in response to that now, Tricia McLaughlin, who is at DHS, said, false. Singh, that's the man's name, is in the United States illegally, and his work authorization was rejected under the Trump administration in 2020. It was later approved by the Biden administration in 2021, and the state of California issues the commercial driver's license. There is no national CDL. Sincerely, genius. Gavin Newsom is falling apart, Senator. And I guess the kids call it crashing out. That's why I've been calling it crashing out. But I think it's just he doesn't know who he is. He tried to be moderate. I'm going to do the Charlie Kirk interview thing. I'm going to try to be that wing and get to the presidency. Now he's like, well, it's not working. I've got to go back to being the Letitia James type of politician or the Jasmine Crockett type of politician. And he's just embarrassing himself publicly.
Yeah, it's. I think they're all kind of competing in this lane of who can be the chief resistor. I see this in the Senate. There's a couple of people that are eyeing the presidency on their side too. And every day there's some foot stomping. And all of a sudden they've learned like cuss words. Like, I think it's hilarious. Like, I grew up in a working class neighborhood. I'm very familiar with 4-letter words, but these guys, they're like, it's like fake authenticity. It's like they're devising a plan to be authentic, which of course people can spot a phony and they're not authentic at all. And so they don't resonate. One of the things they never understood and the mainstream media never understood about President Trump was his ability to connect comes from the fact that like real people, normal people feel like he's speaking to them in a way that he wants to go fight for them. What Gavin Newsom and these guys are doing right now is clearly pandering, and they're moving from like one personality to another. So I guess you add a personality disorder along with the diagnosis of Trump derangement syndrome and you have Gavin Newsom.
Yes, I think I'm not a doctor, but I believe the personality disorder is narcissism. Perhaps there are others involved, but that's the predominant one. It is a healthy dose of narcissism. As part of his new Jasmine Crockett Trump fighter TDS warrior syndrome, he's all in on redistricting, as is, by the way, President Obama, who's going to do something about redistricting here in the next couple of days. But in California, the idea that they're going to redistrict and more gerrymander is very unpopular with the people. They have an independent commission that's supposed to review any redistricting. And you can take a look at this. Let's just focus on independents. 72% of independents in California want to keep this independent commission. Only 28% want to give Gavin Newsom the power to do this. You know what? Let's skip independents. Let's go to Democrats. 61% of Democrats want to keep the independent commission. Only 39% want to be able to give the power to Gavin Newsom and state legislators to gerrymander. I don't think it can be overstated, Senator, how they keep finding themselves on the 20% of 80-20 propositions, or maybe even worse, the 15 and 10% of 85-90 propositions.
It's also why I don't think they've hit rock bottom yet. I think that, like, after the 2024 election, when they got smoked, they kind of did this autopsy for about 30 or 60 days, but they're right back at the stuff that they can't get away from, which is, like you said, on the wrong side of 80-20 issues. You've got senators going down to El Salvador to have margaritas with MS-13 members. I mean, they cannot help themselves because that party's been captured by the radical left. So I think they still have some thumpings to go before they actually have this kind of come to Jesus moment as a political party, that they're way too radical now and they got to figure it out. But they're not going to do it anytime soon, I don't think, and that's further testament. I also think it's interesting now that Barack Obama, Eric Holder, all these people are talking about redistricting. They're just mad that we're fighting back. And one of the reasons, honestly, why I wrote this book, The Last Line of Defense, that people can get, is we have to have the courage to be in that arena and fight, because it's a lot easier to, in my job, right? It's a lot easier to do the ribbon cuttings and get all the accolades, or when there's a sort of a headwind. But what's going to save this country is people willing to fight. They've set the rules. So we absolutely, you look at these places that that are 40% Republican, they don't have a single Republican representative in Congress. And I thought it was hilarious that these Democrats from Texas wanted to flee to Illinois to protest redistricting. Look at the Illinois map. The Illinois map, which is my neighbor to the east, is the most gerrymandered in the country, maybe California. So we're just playing the game now. And they're mad about it because for a long time, Republicans, I don't think, did that. We're doing it. We should do more of it. Because here's the thing. All the things that we're doing are within the rules, right? If they ever had what we have right now, which is a Republican House, Republican Senate, and the White House, they will obliterate the filibuster. They'll pack the Supreme Court. They'll add states to the union. They'll federalize elections. These are all the things that they campaign on. So there is a lot on the line for us to make sure we keep winning elections and fighting back. So I think it's an interesting time right now because the Democrats have come to the realization that President Trump has inspired a new generation of fighters who are willing to save this country along with them.
I want to ask you about one more current event, but you teed me up for the last question I had for you about The Last Line of Defense, your new book, which you can get at Amazon. And you mentioned packing the court. They've been open about what they're willing to do with this power. I talked about this yesterday over on the Fox News channel on the Will Cain Show. The constitutional pillars and protections, I don't know how many have at this point not come under the fire from the left. We've talked about eliminating the filibuster. There's an op-ed in the New York Times talking about doing away with the Senate. There's an op-ed in the New York Times talking about the military should have protected us from Trump, meaning, I guess, a military coup. And the one they're consistent about, even among the quote-unquote thinkers on the left, is what you just said, packing the Supreme Court. So, which is an incredibly scary and dangerous proposition. Take it from 9 to 13, whatever, and you're going to, presumably when you have the levers of power, put 4 big living Constitution progressives on the Supreme Court. And I think that's a really, really big tell about what they mean when they say saving democracy, what they mean and think of the constitutional republic, and what they really mean, which is sheer, unadulterated, unchecked power.
Yep. Think about what they did when they were in power, right? They were willing to make the guy working overtime who didn't want the COVID shot lose his job, couldn't provide for his family. They fired 8,400 qualified military men and women in this country because they refused to bow down to the will of their administration. They created this censorship enterprise that was meant to censor Americans if you had the wrong point of view. They were talking, Will, about creating a disinformation governance board, which is like this Orwellian ministry of truth to decide what you could hear and listen to or what you could say. This is all the stuff they tried to do. What they never got to because of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, quite frankly, they're gone. They're gone. So they would pack the court. And by the way, once you go down this road and they add 4, we get in power. Why not 50? Why not 100? Why not 200? Like you go down this crazy road of it becomes a banana republic. And so what we're fighting for is common sense and the rule of law. What they're fighting for is just raw power. And if you ever needed a motivation, to continue to stay engaged and make sure that we continue to win, that's it. That's it, because the country literally is on the line. Because, look, we saw what they were willing to do. And like at the highest levels of government, and I outlined in the book, Last Line of Defense, even the local superintendent was willing. Like we had parents write into us, Will, when I was AG, like, tell us what you see. There were kids who didn't want to wear a mask that were socially isolated, put on the stage in the middle of a gym to eat lunch by themselves. There were kids that were forced to do the privilege walk, to learn about the oppression matrix. All this crazy stuff, again, wasn't happening somewhere else, was happening here. And that's what they do when they're in charge. So it's just kind of a wild time to be alive. But there's no more, this isn't the party of Bill Clinton that talked about like secure borders. And Bill Clinton had all kinds of problems. But this is no longer like a left of center party. This is a radical
and
version.
Welfare reform.
Right. Like this is not, I'm from Missouri. This is not Harry Truman's Democrat Party. Like this is a party that's been captured by neo-Marxism, and we got to fight back and win. There's a lot on the line.
Well, I'm going to ask you, my last topic with you today is about Virginia, but you are from Missouri, so I respect that, you're from Missouri, not Virginia. By the way, are you Southern in Missouri? I love when I'm scrolling through my Instagram and there's somebody that's defining the South. Look, I'm from Texas. You're from Missouri. I actually think Virginia might belong in this bucket as well as who is truly Southern, and you're in that group like with Kentucky. Missouri, Kentucky, you're in the SEC with Mizzou. You're right. Kind of quasi-Southern culturally, but I don't know. What do you think you are in Missouri?
Well, it's a great question. I swear this is not just a gratuitous plug for the book. I talk about this in the book because I had somebody, an AG, come up to me and say, all right, Schmitt, what's the deal? Is Missouri a northern state, a southern state, a midwestern state, or a western state? And I said, yes. So it's like Missouri's like at the cultural crossroads. Southeast Missouri, that's clearly like SEC country. Southwest Missouri is a little bit different. St. Louis faces the east. Kansas City faces to the west. So I love that about my state, that it's just got a lot of, the crossroads of the country. But we're glad to be in the SEC. I'll tell you that. I was meeting with Coach Drinkwitz, so I feel good about the football team.
Are you? Has it gone well from Mizzou? Are you?
I am.
I mean, you've had a few moments.
Back-to-back 10-win seasons, Will. Come on. A little bit of credit. Back-to-back 10-win seasons.
Texas is similar. Texas is kind of southern in the east. It's definitely southwestern in the west. It's a little bit plainsy up in the panhandle. It's a little bit Mexico in the south. So we've got a lot of the same thing going on.
Well,
and Missouri, Virginia now.
And Missouri's got a connection because a lot of the outlaws in Missouri went down to Texas, So there's a lot of Missouri connections in Texas.
Well, okay, I was a big Outlaw kid, loved it. I read, so we've got Jesse James, but I don't know if Jesse ever came down to Texas. Who did the younger
Outlaw
brothers? Maybe who were the Outlaws?
Think of the movie Outlaw Josie Wales, right? That's the kind of guy I'm thinking of, right? You've got after in the late 19th century, a lot of Missouri outlaws who were like sort of fleeing from the law went down to Texas. So that's part of both of the connection, I guess, between.
Who is the most famous non-sports Missourian? Is it Truman? Is it Jesse James? Who is the most famous Missourian?
I'm glad you asked that question, Will Cain. We've got Mark Twain, Walt Disney.
Yes.
Okay. We got of course, you got Jesse James. Hubble, the guy who did the first telescope, was from Missouri. We're going to be building the F-47 in St. Louis. That's been awarded. So there's a lot of great things going on, a lot of great history in Missouri. That's for sure. And we've got the St. Louis baseball Cardinals. So that's right.
I love state pride. Okay, but you do live at least part of your time now in the D.C. metro area. I don't know where you live. I don't know if you're a Georgetown guy, if you're
I
an
just go
Arlington
back
suburbs
and forth.
guy.
I get back home as fast as I can. I'm back and forth. Yes.
You do have a 6-year term, so not exactly like a congressman, having to go home every weekend, I would assume. But explain to me Northern Virginia. I'm at a total loss here. So this story just came out. Loudoun County, which is the center place, that's like the school education battles. It's what brought us Governor Glenn Youngkin, I think.
Yeah.
But this is a story. Loudoun County Public Schools suspended 2 high school boys after they expressed discomfort with a female student entering the boys' locker room and recording a video. So apparently the 2 guys said something like, the reaction is what got them in trouble. And from what I can read so far, the reaction was like, what is she doing in here? Okay, I don't know if she's trans. I don't know what the deal is. And of course, now Trump signed an executive order trying to enforce, sanity on trans issues. The DOE is going to look at funding. But I just don't understand Northern Virginia. Like, why is it so insane in Loudoun County?
Well, you're right. And if you remember, Scott Smith talked about it in the book too, because there was a lot of this stuff's happened nationwide for whatever reason, but Flashpoint has been in Northern Virginia, where it's sort of this kind of blue area, or purple area at least, of a relatively red state, where the school boards in some instances have been totally captured. And the administrative teams, I think, what the story here too is these administrators are trained, and they got these DEI and CRT sessions, and they teach the staff to divide the room by race, oppressor and oppressed, and that affects a lot of, I think, what happens in these local schools. But this in particular, this was the very issue, if you remember, that Scott Smith was objecting to. His daughter had been assaulted in a bathroom by a male student dressing as a female or whatever it was. And so now you kind of have the inverse. I think it's just very good. Like, let's have male and female bathrooms and locker rooms, and we call it a day. Like, this is like kind of common sense stuff, just like men competing in women's sports. And so my guess is Harmeet Dillon, who is the head of the Civil Rights Division now at the Department of Justice, I got to believe she's coming on this thing. She's been very aggressive. We had a hearing. What are you going to be focusing on? She's very much focused on this kind of stuff. She's focused on DEI in corporate America too, which is, I think there's some more to come there. But this is just crazy. And this is the kind of stuff, again, that the Democrats, they lose the plot on. Normal people are just like, enough of this. Like, can we just teach about math and reading and civics? Why are schools, why are kids subject to these ridiculous social experiments? And so again, that's why I don't think they've hit rock bottom yet. And you got another example in Loudoun County. Right.
This is a 95-5 issue, and somehow I'd love to know the percentages are in Loudoun. What are you guys? What's going on in your heads in Loudoun County? Okay, so the book is The Last Line of Defense: How to Beat the Left in Court. Again, he has his own personal experience with this, and he tells you the stories as he's relayed with you here today on Will Cain Country. We encourage you to go check it out. It's Senator Eric Schmitt of the great state of Missouri. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
All right, there he goes. You bet. Senator Eric Schmitt. Okay, MSNBC's dead. I'm going to lay out for you how it died. Who killed MSNBC, at least in part? Plus, here comes the challenge. The Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Health and Human Services have laid down the challenge for you and for me when we come back on Will Cain Country. I introduce to you Miss Now, MS Now, formerly MSNBC. It is Will Cain Country. Starting tomorrow, streaming live at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel page. We want you to head over there. The link is in the top of the comment section. Go hit subscribe. Tomorrow you won't be able to find it as easily as you have in the past, where some 30 to 100,000 of you have been joining us on the Fox News YouTube channel. We're building our own. It is for us. That means you, me, the boys, tinfoil, two-a-days. We want you there as well. Every day in the comment section. We'll do live streams and unique content as well. But it's our home. That's where we want you. We also want you on Spotify and Apple, so you can hit subscribe there if you're used to listening to the show. But if you like watching, then you might want to tune in to some of that you used to watch, at least in clips, on MSNBC. Joy Reid, formerly of MSNBC, now on the internet. I don't know where. Substack, podcast. I don't know. But this is the kind of gold she's still spinning, and here's what she thinks of white people.
They can't fix the history they did. Their ancestors made this country into a slave hell. But they can clean it up now because they got the Smithsonian. They can get rid of all the slavery stuff. They got PragerU. They can lie about the history to the children. They can't originally invent anything more than they ever were able to invent good music. We black folk gave y'all country music, hip hop, R&B, jazz, rock and roll. They couldn't even invent that, but they have to call a white man the king because they couldn't make rock and roll. So they have to stamp the king.
Racist. Maybe the biggest racist to ever grace a microphone. I'm talking George Wallace level racist. Joy Reid. And Joy Reid is one of the people, along with the retired old lady that stands on balconies screaming into her phone, formerly known as Keith Olbermann. He, she, I'm not sure on the exact right pronouns, along with Joy Reid, carried the casket of MSNBC into the grave. They so burned the reputation, so killed the brand, that NBC, itself a bastion of liberal bias, said, enough. This is starting to look bad, boys. We got to distance ourselves, spin it off, rebrand it. Don't even let it share the same 3 letters. And so MSNBC is now MS Now. Here's the new logo. MS stands for My Source. Now stands for News, Opinion, World. Miss Now. Miss Now has replaced MSNBC. People have been pointing out, by the way, that the flag, weird-looking flag, I guess it's supposed to be some version of the American flag. It's 2 red stripes on a white field. Looks like a K. So it says KMS Now, which apparently I didn't know this. The internet says KMS means kill myself. Kill myself now is the new brand of MSNBC. Brought to the grave by the likes of Keith Olbermann and Lawrence O'Donnell and Chris Hayes and Joy Reid. It's almost sad. It is sad. It's almost sad that we have to retire the phrase MSNBC. What will Mark Levin do? MSDNC. What will be the new name? But this lends itself pretty easily because it truly is sad. The ratings honestly couldn't be much lower, especially in the demographic. MSNBC ratings are awful in the demo. You know what I mean by in the demo? 25 to 54-year-old viewers. You get 2 metrics in cable television. Overall viewership, wherein, so for example, the Will Cain show on the Fox News channel is regularly above 2 million people. Outrates, for example, Jimmy Fallon on NBC. But then the demo matters because that's what advertisers care about to buy. That's where we really shine on the Will Cain show. But even CNN outranks MSNBC in the demo. It's literally the oldest cable channel out there. Everybody likes to talk about the age of Fox viewers. It's nothing percentage-wise as compared to what's happening at MSNBC. They're so old. Great question, by the way. Then, will they be able to rebrand? Will they be able to follow the rebrand to MS Now? Sad. So sad. It is sad as well the way that people are reacting to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, the starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, did something that you don't often see from a professional athlete. He reposted Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, huge conservative voice and influence, posted on X, it's all about Jesus. That's all it says. It's all about Jesus. Lamar Jackson retweeted, reposted Charlie Kirk. And in the comment section, boy, are they coming after Lamar Jackson. Charlie Kirk's a racist. How dare you, Lamar Jackson? He's posting about his belief in Jesus. And the world that once represented perhaps the core audience of MSNBC and TikTok responds with calling Lamar Jackson a racist. Hang in there, Lamar. You know your values. You know what's up. Here's what's up. The Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Health and Human Services have issued a challenge for all of America. Get fit, not fat. They're putting it in and challenging military members, but also Americans across the board. What is it? 100 push-ups, 50 pull-ups in 5 minutes. Here's the video just put out by HHS and the Pentagon.
All right, here we are in the bowels of the Pentagon for the Pete and Bobby Challenge. I think this was your idea, so I blame you. But it's all about Make America Healthy Again. We're going to be fit, not fat. We want recruits that are ready to go and challenge. What are we doing today, Bobby?
Well, Pete and I are going to do our part, encourage American youth to do this challenge. And the challenge is to do 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups in any order you want in under 10 minutes.
So 5 minutes is the top standard that we want to meet.
Not going to be able to do.
Sheesh.
What is that? 2 days. Why sheesh?
Good luck, buddy.
Well,
They
you
look
say
good.
good luck, buddy. Okay. So am I going to do this? We'll see. That's hard. First of all, let's just take this. 50 pull-ups is a washout for a lot of people. I can't forget the time limit. Like who can do 50 pull-ups, right? Like that's, and my favorite right now are the internet commenters who are like, that's not a real pull-up, or 0, 0, 0. The comments like, first of all, how old is Bobby Kennedy? Is he 70?
He's in his 70s.
I think he's
like
70,
71,
right?
72. Yeah.
And he's doing he did it. By the way, in the video it goes on and shows
71.
what Pete and Bobby did. 71-year-old Bobby Kennedy did it in 5 minutes and 48 seconds. Now, were all his pull-ups beautiful? No, but I'd love to see your 45th pull-up. And Pete Hegseth did it in, I believe it was 5 minutes and 25 seconds or so. He beat Bobby Kennedy by about 30 seconds, something like that, 20 seconds. They both missed the 5 minutes. They interviewed several soldiers who were down there doing it with them, and there were some that hit under 5 minutes. There was a woman who did it, I believe, in like 4 something, and there was a I think it was a guy who did it under 3 minutes. Did it under 3 minutes. Like, that is insane.
Workout warrior.
Whew. So, here's the deal. I just got done with the New York City Navy SEAL swim, wherein I had to do 300 push-ups, 66 pull-ups, and swim 3 miles. And it's so convenient that Pete did this. It's so convenient from SecDef that literally a day or two after I finish, I'm getting the toxins out of my system, taking my vitamin D and my zinc, doing a little rest and recuperation. Treating a sunburn, by the way, one of the worst parts of the SEAL swim, I am super sunburned,
I believe
is then SecDef at the end of his workout says this.
Okay, Will Cain, you're the next in the Pete and Bobby Challenge. Can you do 50 pull-ups and 100 push-ups in under 5 minutes? I didn't quite make it, but come on, we saw you swim across the Hudson. You're my man. Let's see it. Record it, show the evidence, and maybe we'll believe it. It's on you.
Okay, so I've been called out. By the way, also in the video, in the longer video, Kennedy calls out the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, and says, let's see what you got, Duffy. So I've got to do this, and so does Duffy. And just as happenstance is the case, Duffy is in Dallas this week.
Wow.
And I'm scheduled to have dinner with him a little bit later this week. And I texted him yesterday and I said, do you want to do this together? And I have to admit, he's not very excited. But I'm going to see if I can get him, and we're going to go do this together, and we'll post our results a little bit later this week. Go ahead, 2 days.
Are you ready for this right now? Like, if you went out and stretched and hydrated, could you do this right, like, today?
Versus what?
Versus
more training for it?
Yeah, like a couple weeks of training or something like that even. Just right now, at like good to go.
No, I'm good to go.
Wow.
I'm good to go.
Wow.
Sorry. I don't mean to dunk.
Wow.
But there is no question that I can do it. There's no question I can do 50 pull-ups and 100 push-ups.
Push-ups
The
are hard.
question is, how fast? Honestly, the push-ups will be harder for me than the pull-ups. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you ever do, yeah, I mean, obviously I just had to do a bunch of 3 sets of 100 push-ups this weekend. push-ups get that burn in your chest, and it's like then when that burn sets in, then you're down to like the burn comes back faster. Do you know what I mean? So like when I was doing it this weekend, I would start with like a set of 30, and I've had to do 100 push-ups. I used to do CrossFit, so it's like my routine is you go like 30, 20, 15, and now you're at 65. See if you can get another 15 set in to get you to 80, and then it's 10 and 10. But that doesn't really work because I do feel like at the end you're doing sets of 5. At the end, my chest is burning, and I'm like,
you're at failure.
I can only do 3 or 4. You're at failure, 100%. And now you're mixing in doing the pull-ups at the same time, and those are fatiguing each other, right? So I don't know the order to do it. I don't know how to do it. I do know this. You shouldn't come out of the gates hot. Like, I shouldn't come out and try to do 50 push-ups on my first set. And there's a part of you that says, get over the hump. Just get a bunch and then leave yourself little increments. But I think that's a bad idea because you're, like you said, you're at failure, and failure keeps coming faster as you go. And you'll be down to doing 2 push-ups at a time. So same thing with the pull-ups. I did one of my 22 sets this weekend all in one. I did, at the second barge, I did 22. But I don't want to do that, and then because then the next set's going to be miserable, and I'm not. So I think I have a buddy that I was talking to about this. His theory is you do 20 and 10, 5 times, 20 push-ups, 10 pull-ups, 5 times, and see how quickly you can do that. It's not coming out of the gates hot. It's what's that last.
You're just shaking on
honestly, the bar. Totally. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be kipping, okay? And my push-ups aren't going to be pretty, especially at the end. They're going to be pretty short-stroked, you know, like
Kippin's trying,
but they'll start out good. I'm ready for the internet commenters. Those aren't real pull-ups. Those aren't real push-ups.
Girly CrossFit,
okay, buddy. Let me see your video.
Do you want to do it on the Friday Sports podcast?
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, we don't technically have a guest yet, so you know.
Well, I think I'm going to have to get it done before Friday. I'm either going to do it.
Oof.
My plan is to either do it tomorrow or Thursday.
The anxiety I have
my plan
for
to
you
do it.
is
And then
wild.
I have a little anxiety myself. And then who do I call out? Who should I call out to do it? Because that's the idea. This is like the ice bucket challenge, right? You got to spread it. Like, you get. Maybe I'll call it you, Tinfoil.
I would just die. Literally one push-up in, and I would just keel over. So I don't think that.
I did CrossFit for years, but it would take me about another year and a half to get ready for that. So, not yet.
I mean, I've thought about this. Like, I'm not sure who I call out yet. Do
you go Fox? Do you go outside Fox?
I don't know. Well, I thought about what if I called out Jesse Waters, but my feeling is he just wouldn't do it. I just think he just wouldn't do it. Like,
no.
I could call. I don't think he's gonna do it. I don't know how else to say it. So
like
it's a
Bill
wasted
Malugin
challenge. You know what I mean? Oh, if I challenge Bill Malugin, he's gonna beat me.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is fine.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say
That
that.
dude's in shape.
I didn't mean to say that so emphatically. This is my bad.
Yeah, who else on Fox could I challenge? I need the Willis to jump into the comments section. Give me a good idea. Like, if you tell me to challenge Greg, the problem is Greg is like, Jesse, he just won't do it. He's not going to do it, so I can't do that. I've got to find somebody. Ooh, Bill Himmer might do it. What do you think? Think Himmer would do it?
Bill's a good thought. He looks in shape. Every time I see him, he looks like he's just come from the gym or is going to the gym.
It's true.
I know, but he talks about yoga, so I'm not really sure.
Interesting.
Calisthenics. Not that yoga's great.
It actually might be good for him as far as the pull-ups go, because he might have he might not be too muscly up top, to pull himself up.
I think he's got it.
I thought about like going the athlete route, like Josh Hamilton was just in here. Should I challenge Josh Hamilton?
Interesting.
People
are saying Lawrence Jones in the chat right now.
Oh.
Are they Lawrence Jones? Lawrence is a big guy. People don't realize that. Like, he's a big guy. Like, I don't mean to. I don't. What is Lawrence's pull-up ability?
Man.
That's what
He's
I don't
got shoulders.
know.
I think that would help him.
Could be a problem.
Huh. I could shame Lawrence into trying.
Someone else says it has to be an athlete.
Someone said what?
It has to be an athlete. Do you think? Do you think maybe like a Dak Prescott
or like a recently former athlete?
I don't know Dak well enough to challenge Dak. I could go military, but they're going to crush it. Like,
yeah,
I know a lot of the Navy SEALs.
That's ridiculous,
right? That I was just with. Yeah, I mean, I could easily get some badass Navy SEALs to do it. They're just going to crush it. Who's a newly retired athlete that we could do?
Like someone recent that's
Hockey
still
player?
in good shape.
Like Joe Pavelski, former Dallas Star, San Jose Shark. I could do that.
Golf. Any golfers you know?
Well, I could try to flag Scotty down in the neighborhood. Hey, Scotty.
Yeah.
Hey, Scotty. So, hold on.
Please.
I got a thing for you, Scotty.
Yeah.
And then what if Scotty throws his shoulder out doing the pull-ups and then, like, the world's #1 golfer can't golf? Because he's like Tiger Woods to this deal.
He blows the Grand
I would
Slam.
feel horrible.
Will Cain ruins Scheffler's career.
Big people talking.
Who has it got to be? I'll tell you what. I really do need you, Willisha. I need you in the comment section. I'd love a Fox News personality idea. I really do want to challenge Jesse. Jesse's the one I want to do, but I'm just afraid he's going to just ignore it. He's not going to do it.
Absolutely not.
So I need a Fox. Maybe Lawrence is my guy, and then maybe somebody else outside of the Fox world.
Someone says Chris Cuomo.
To challenge. You know who I thought about? I'll tell you one I thought about is Dan Orlovsky from ESPN.
Ooh,
I'll bet you Dan
boy.
could do it. And he'd be pretty good.
I don't know.
I think Dan would accept the challenge.
He would.
He has that problem with his shoulder. I've seen the commercials for his little shoulder exerciser thing. So I don't know. Would he be able to?
I don't know.
I don't know.
All right, so drop into the comments section. Help me figure it out. Right now I'm leaning towards maybe like Jesse and Dan Orlovsky. That's kind of what I'm thinking. God, there's somebody else out there. We just got a friend of the show. Scott King says Griff Jenkins. Did you say that on air, Scott?
Jenkins.
I don't even know. He said Griff Jenkins.
I bet Griff. He was
Maybe.
a surfer, Griff. So he's got some good strength. Is a surfer.
Yeah. All right. I got to figure out that and my strategy and whether or not I can get the Secretary of Transportation to do this with me. We'll find out a little bit later this week. Make sure you tune in to Will Cain Country. I will promise you, I think I will promise you results by Thursday. That's going to do it for us today here on Will Cain Country. Make sure you subscribe to the Will Cain Country YouTube channel. That's where we'll be tomorrow. See you again next time.